The massive space station hung in the void like a glittering jewel. Council Station Prime was the most important place in the galaxy. Representatives from over 40 different alien species worked here. They made laws that affected trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. Today was different. Today, 2 new species wanted to join the Galactic Council. This had never happened before. Usually, new species came one at a time. They spent years proving they were civilized enough to join the peaceful galaxy. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the station's bright corridors. Her shoes made soft sounds on the polished floor. Behind her, Marcus Wright followed silently. He was tall and broad, with scars on his hands that told stories of old fights. His eyes never stopped moving, watching everything around them. The aliens they passed stared at them with wide eyes. Some moved away quickly. Others whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music or wind through trees. The humans looked normal enough. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But something about them made the aliens nervous. Sarah stopped at a large window that showed the planet below. Zenthari Prime was beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, and green continents that had never known war. The cities glowed softly in the darkness, filled with beings who had never worried about where their next meal would come from. Pretty world, Marcus said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made nearby aliens move further away. Very peaceful, Sarah agreed. She had read about Zenthari Prime during the long journey here. No wars for over 2,000 years. No natural disasters. No dangerous animals. The Zenthari had evolved on a world that never tried to kill them. A soft chime echoed through the corridor. "Attention," said a pleasant voice in perfect galactic standard. "The delegation from Saros IV has arrived. All council members, please. Prepare for the welcoming ceremony." Sarah smiled. The other Deathworlders had made it. She had been curious about them during the journey. Saros IV was in the same solar system as Earth, but they had never met face to face. Both species had been too busy surviving their own worlds to visit each other. The corridor filled with more aliens as they hurried toward the main docking bay. Sarah and Marcus joined the crowd, but they moved differently. While the aliens flowed around obstacles like water, the humans moved in straight lines. Other beings got out of their way without being asked. The docking bay was huge. Hundreds of aliens filled the space, all wearing the bright colors of their different species. Sarah spotted the council members easily. They stood on a raised platform, their ceremonial robes marking them as the galaxy's leaders. The Zenthari Council leader stepped forward. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes. "We welcome our friends from Saros IV," he said in his musical voice. "May this be the beginning of a long friendship." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Silence fell over the docking bay. The Saurian delegation stepped out, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ambassador Kethvar was 7 feet tall and covered in dark scales that looked like armor. Her yellow eyes swept across the crowd like a predator checking for threats. Behind her came Rixtal, smaller but no less intimidating. His claws clicked softly on the metal floor. Sarah had expected them to look dangerous. She had not expected them to move like soldiers. The aliens in the crowd pressed closer together. Some of the smaller species actually hid behind larger ones. Even the council members on their platform seemed nervous. But Sarah was not afraid. She was fascinated. Kethavar's eyes found hers across the crowded bay. For a moment, the 2 predators studied each other. Then, slowly, Kethavar nodded. It was a small gesture, but it said everything. Recognition, respect, understanding. They were the same kind of creature, even if they looked different. The Zenthari Council leader cleared his throat. "Welcome, friends from Saros IV. We hope your journey was comfortable." Kethavar's reply rumbled like distant thunder. "It was adequate. We are grateful for your invitation." Her galactic standard was perfect, but her voice carried undertones that made several aliens shiver. "Excellent." The council leader's smile looked forced. "Please, allow us to escort you to your quarters. You must be tired after your long journey." "We Do not tire easily, Rixtal said. His voice was quieter than his ambassador's, but somehow more unsettling. We would prefer to begin the evaluation process immediately. Murmurs ran through the crowd. New species usually needed days to recover from long space travel. They always wanted time to rest and adjust to the station's environment. Of course, the council leader said quickly. Whatever you prefer. We have prepared a full schedule of meetings and assessments. As the crowd began to disperse, Sarah found herself walking near the Saurian delegation. Kethvar noticed her approach and slowed her pace slightly. You are the human ambassador, Kethvar observed. It was not a question. Sarah Chen, Sarah replied, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Kethvar looked at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out with her own clawed appendage. Her grip was firm but careful. She could have crushed Sarah's bones without effort, but she controlled her strength perfectly. You do not smell of fear, Kethvar said, with what might have been approval. Neither do you, Sarah replied. Around them, aliens were still staring. Some were taking pictures with their recording devices. Others were speaking rapidly into communication units, probably reporting to their home worlds. Marcus stepped up beside Sarah. His eyes met Rixtal's and something passed between them. A nod of recognition between professionals who understood violence. Interesting, Rixtal murmured. Your guardian is well trained. The best, Sarah agreed. Your advisor seems capable as well. He has kept me alive for many years, Kethvar said simply. The council leader approached nervously. Perhaps we should move to a more private area for introductions. The main corridor might be more appropriate for detailed discussions. Sarah almost smiled. The poor alien was clearly uncomfortable with having two sets of predators in his peaceful station. She could not blame him. Even she could feel the tension in the air. Every instinct the prey species possessed was telling them to run. An excellent suggestion, Sarah said politely. We would not want to cause any disruption. As they walked toward the exit, Sarah noticed how the crowd parted before them. The humans and Saurians moved together naturally, like a pack that had been hunting together for years. Behind them, the aliens watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright fear. The council leader led them through corridors lined with artwork from across the galaxy. Beautiful paintings and sculptures created by species that had never known real danger. Everything was soft and peaceful and safe. Your quarters are in the diplomatic section, the council leader explained as they walked. You will have full access to our research libraries and cultural centers. We hope you will find everything to your satisfaction. I am sure we will, Sarah replied. But she was not looking at the pretty decorations on the walls. She was watching how Marcus and Rixtal automatically checked every doorway and corner they passed. She was noticing how Kethvar's eyes tracked the positions of security cameras and emergency exits. They were not tourists admiring art. They were predators mapping territory, and judging by the nervous whispers that followed them down the corridor, everyone else had noticed too. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when Deathworlders decided to be civilized. The evaluation chamber was designed to be comfortable. Soft lighting filled the circular room. The wall showed peaceful scenes from different worlds. Gentle music played in the background. Everything was meant to help new species feel calm and safe during their first council interviews. It was not working. Dr. Velian, the council's chief psychologist, adjusted her notes for the third time. Across from her, the human ambassador sat perfectly still. Sarah Chen's posture was relaxed, but her eyes were alert. She looked like she was ready to spring into action at any moment. Please make yourself comfortable, Dr. Velian said in her softest voice. Her own species, the Kalari, were known for their calming presence. Their fur changed colors to show peaceful emotions. Right now, her fur was showing nervous purple instead of the calm blue she intended. I am comfortable, Sarah replied. Thank you for asking. Dr. Velian looked at her notes. The questions seemed so simple when she prepared them. All new species answered them easily. They talked about their peaceful homes and their desire to join the galaxy's civilized community. Tell me about your homeworld, Dr. Velian began. What is Earth like? Sarah smiled. It's beautiful. We have blue oceans and green forests, mountains that touch the sky, deserts that stretch beyond the horizon. The weather changes with the seasons, and life adapts to survive in every environment. That sounded normal enough. Dr. Velian relaxed slightly. And your people live in harmony with this environment? We've learned to survive it, Sarah said simply. Survive? Dr. Velian's ears twitched with confusion. Do you not live peacefully on your world? Sarah tilted her head, considering the question. I suppose that depends on what you mean by peaceful. We don't fight the planet anymore. We've learned to work with what it gives us. Fight the planet? Dr. Velian's fur shifted to worried orange. Your world is hostile? Not hostile, Sarah corrected. Just challenging. Earth has ice ages that last thousands of years, volcanic eruptions that can block out the sun, earthquakes that can level cities, storms that can destroy everything in their path, diseases that can kill millions. But we adapt. We survive. We grow stronger. Dr. Velian wrote frantically in her notes. This was not what she expected to hear. And this is normal for your species? Of course, Sarah said, looking puzzled. How else would you become strong enough to reach the stars? In the next chamber, Counselor Thak was having similar problems with the Saurian ambassador. Kethvar sat perfectly still, her yellow eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his shell want to retract. Your world, Thak managed to say. Is it pleasant? Saros 4 provides many opportunities for growth, Kethvar replied in her rumbling voice. Growth? Thak asked hopefully. You mean technological advancement? Cultural development? Personal strength, Kethvar clarified. The acid rains test your resolve. The ground shakers teach you to move quickly. The sky hunters show you the value of watching above as well as ahead. Thak's shell definitely wanted to retract now. Acid rain, ground shakers, sky hunters. The rains come every few weeks, Kethvar explained as if discussing the weather. They dissolve anything that is not properly protected. The ground shakers are large enough to swallow a city. They hunt by vibration, so you must learn to move silently. The sky hunters are faster than your ships. They have very good eyes. And your people survive these things? The strong do, Kethvar said simply. The weak do not. This is how it has always been. Thak made a note to request stronger medication for his stress condition. Meanwhile, in the station's main cafeteria, Marcus Wright was causing problems just by existing. He had not said a word to anyone. He had not made any threatening gestures. He was simply eating lunch at a corner table, watching the room with calm professional interest. But every alien in the cafeteria could feel his presence like a weight in the air. Conversations happened in whispers. Several species had quietly moved to tables as far from him as possible. The Zenthari server who brought his food had trembling hands. Marcus noticed the fear, but he did not understand it. He was being as peaceful as he knew how to be. He kept his hands visible on the table. He made no sudden movements. He even smiled politely when someone looked his way. The problem was his smile. To a human, it looked friendly. To prey species, who had evolved to recognize predators, it looked like a display of hunting teeth. Rixtal entered the cafeteria and immediately spotted Marcus. The Saurian tactical advisor moved through the crowd like a shark through a school of fish. Aliens scrambled out of his way without even thinking about it. He approached Marcus's table and gestured to an empty chair. May I? Please, Marcus replied. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly across the suddenly silent cafeteria. Rixtal sat down carefully. His claws scraped softly against the table's surface, leaving small marks in the metal. Your people eat alone? Sometimes, Marcus said. Yours, when necessary. Rixtal looked around the cafeteria. Every alien in the room was staring at them. Now. They are afraid. I noticed, Marcus replied. I'm not sure why. I haven't done anything threatening. Rixtal's head tilted slightly. You exist, That is threatening enough for them. Before Marcus could reply, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. An automated voice announced calmly, "Minor emergency in Section 7. All non-essential personnel, please clear the area. Emergency. Teams respond to Section 7. The cafeteria erupted in controlled panic. Aliens moved quickly but orderly toward the exits. They had practiced for emergencies, but they had never experienced a real one. Marcus and Rixtal reacted differently. Both were on their feet instantly, their heads turned toward the sound of the alarms. They moved toward the emergency before they even thought about it. "Section 7, Marcus said, already heading for the door. "Ventilation systems," Rixtal replied, falling into step beside him. "Possible fire." They ran through corridors filled with fleeing aliens. Their feet pounded in perfect rhythm, like soldiers who had trained together for years. Behind them, security cameras tracked their movement with mechanical precision. In the council's observation room, a dozen alien leaders watched the security feeds with growing alarm. "They're heading directly toward the emergency," Counselor Thack observed. His shell was fully retracted now. "Why?" Dr. Valian asked. "The emergency teams are already responding. Civilians are supposed to evacuate, not investigate." "Look at how they move," the Zenthari Council leader said quietly. "They're not running toward safety, they're running toward danger." On the screen, Marcus and Rixtal reached Section 7. Smoke was beginning to seep from the ventilation grates. The human and Saurian exchanged a quick look, then split up without discussion. Marcus headed for the nearest emergency control panel, while Rixtal began examining the ventilation system. "How do they know what to do?" Dr. Valian whispered. "They've never been on this station before." "Emergency protocols are universal," the council leader replied, but his voice was troubled. "What concerns me is how naturally they work together. Their species have never met before today." On the screen, Sarah Chen and Ambassador Kethvar arrived at the emergency site. They immediately joined their companions without needing explanations. Sarah began coordinating with the station's emergency teams while Kethvar used her strength to move heavy equipment. Within minutes, the fire was contained. The ventilation system was restored. The emergency was over. But in the observation room, the council members sat in stunned silence. "Did you see how quickly they responded?" Thack asked. "Did you see how they immediately worked together?" Dr. Valian added. "Did you see how the emergency teams deferred to them?" The council leader finished. They had all seen it. Two species from worlds that tried to kill them every day. Two species that turned danger into opportunity and crisis into cooperation. Two species that made the galaxy's professional emergency responders look like frightened children. The council leader touched his communication device. "I want full psychological profiles on both delegations," he said quietly. "And I want them by tomorrow." He had a feeling the galaxy was about to become a very different place. The council's main chamber was a masterpiece of peaceful architecture. Curved walls rose toward a domed ceiling painted with scenes of harmony between different species. Soft light filtered down from hidden sources. Every detail was designed to promote calm discussion and peaceful resolution. Today it felt more like a trap. The 12 council members sat in their curved arrangement, facing the two delegations. Sarah Chen and Kethvar occupied the speaker's platform in the center of the room. Behind them, Marcus Wright and Rixtal stood at attention like honor guards. Counselor Thack activated the chamber's recording systems. This session would be transmitted to governments across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to know about the Deathworlders. "Today we will conduct the strategic assessment," Thack announced. His voice echoed in the large chamber. "We will present you with historical scenarios. Your responses will help us understand how your species might contribute to galactic peace." Sarah nodded politely. Kethvar remained perfectly still. The first scenario, Dr. Valian read from her datapad, occurred 300 years ago. The Hegemony Wars. A militaristic species called the Vorthon began conquering peaceful worlds. They had superior technology and showed no interest in negotiation. How would your species have handled this threat? Sarah and Kethvar exchanged a brief glance. It was Sarah who spoke first. "What were the Vorthon's key advantages?" she asked. Superior weapons and faster ships, Dr. Velian replied. Also, they attacked without warning and showed no mercy to civilians. And what resources did the peaceful species have? Greater numbers, better supply lines, and more industrial capacity. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. When she spoke, her voice was calm and professional. The solution would be to make their advantages meaningless. Avoid direct confrontation where they're stronger. Use hit-and-run tactics to damage their supply lines. Target their industrial worlds, not their military fleets. Make every victory cost them more than they gain. Several council members shifted, uncomfortably in their seats. You're suggesting attacking civilians? Councillor Thack asked. I'm suggesting attacking infrastructure, Sarah corrected. Military factories, supply depots, communication centers make it impossible for them to maintain their war machine. But what about the people working in those facilities? Dr. Velian pressed. Sarah's expression did not change. In a war for survival, you prioritize saving the maximum number of lives. Sometimes that means accepting smaller losses to prevent larger ones. Kethavar spoke for the first time. The human strategy is sound but incomplete. All eyes turned to the Saurian ambassador. Her yellow gaze swept across the council members like a predator studying prey. You would also need to break their will to fight, Kethavar continued. Capture their leaders. Show the consequences of aggression. Make the cost of conquest so high that other species choose not to follow their example. You mean execute prisoners? Thack asked in horror. I mean demonstrate strength, Kethavar replied. A predator that shows weakness invites more attacks. The council members looked at each other with growing alarm. These were not the responses they expected from species seeking to join their peaceful alliance. Let's try another scenario, Dr. Velian said quickly. The plague ships incident. Unknown vessels appeared in several systems, releasing biological weapons that killed millions. The ship's origins were never discovered. How would you have responded? This time, Kethavar answered first. Hunt them down. Find their base. Destroy everything connected to them. But you said their origins were unknown, Thack protested. Then you make them known, Rixtal said quietly from behind his ambassador. You interrogate survivors. You analyze their technology. You trace their supply chains. You follow every connection until you find the source. And then? Dr. Velian asked, though she looked like she did not want to hear the answer. Then you remove the threat permanently, Sarah said simply. You make sure it can never happen again. How would you remove the threat? Thack pressed. Sarah and Kethavar looked at each other again. Some silent communication passed between them. Complete sterilization of their facilities, Sarah said finally. Destruction of their research. Elimination of everyone involved in the project. You're talking about genocide, Dr. Velian whispered. We're talking about preventing genocide, Kethavar corrected. If they used biological weapons once, they will use them again. The only way to protect innocent lives is to ensure they cannot repeat their actions. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the air recycling systems. The council members stared at the Deathworlders with expressions of shock and fear. Councillor Thack cleared his throat nervously. Perhaps we should discuss your military capabilities. For defensive purposes, of course. Of course, Sarah agreed. What is your current level of military technology? Thack asked. Marcus stepped forward slightly. Which type would you like to know about? Type? Thack repeated. Personal weapons, vehicle systems, orbital platforms, or strategic weapons, Marcus clarified helpfully. The casual way he listed categories of destruction made several council members visibly pale. Strategic weapons, Thack managed to say. Marcus looked to Sarah, who nodded permission. We have several classes of planet killers, he said in the same tone someone might use to discuss the weather. Kinetic bombardment systems, antimatter warheads, and stellar manipulation devices. Stellar manipulation. Dr. Velian's voice was barely a whisper. Making stars go supernova, Rixtal explained helpfully. Though that method is impractical for most conflicts. Too much collateral damage to neighboring systems, You can destroy stars? Thak asked. Both our species developed the capability independently, Kethvar confirmed. It is a natural progression once you understand nuclear physics and have sufficient industrial capacity. But why would you build such things? Dr. Velian demanded. Sarah looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Deterrence. If your enemies know you can destroy them completely, they're less likely to attack you. Has your species ever used these weapons? Thak asked. Not the Star Killers, Sarah replied. We've used smaller strategic weapons twice. Both times ended conflicts quickly and saved millions of lives that would have been lost in prolonged conventional warfare. The council members were too shocked to respond immediately. In the silence, Kethvar spoke up. You seem disturbed by our capabilities, she observed. How do you defend yourselves against serious threats? We negotiate, Thak said automatically. And, if negotiation fails, we impose economic sanctions. And if sanctions fail, Thak looked helplessly at his colleagues. We form committees to study the problem. Rixtel made a sound that might have been laughter if it had come from a human throat. You form committees to fight wars? We don't fight wars, Dr. Velian said proudly. The galaxy has been at peace for over 400 years. Because you have been lucky, Kethvar said bluntly. Peace is not the natural state of the universe. Peace is what you have when someone strong enough to break it chooses not to. But surely civilized species can resolve their differences through discussion, Thak protested. Civilized species, yes, Sarah agreed. But what happens when you encounter a species that is not civilized? What happens when you meet beings who see your peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited? That's theoretical, Dr. Velian said. All known species in this galaxy are civilized. All known species in this galaxy developed on safe worlds, Marcus pointed out. Worlds that never forced them to become strong. But the galaxy is vast. There are billions of systems you haven't explored. Yet, what makes you think they're all filled with peaceful beings? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. For the first time, the council members were forced to consider the possibility that their peaceful galaxy might not stay peaceful forever. Our databases show no evidence of hostile species beyond our borders, Thak said weakly. Your databases show no evidence because you haven't looked for any, Rixtal replied. You've been content to stay in your safe corner of the galaxy and assume the rest is just as peaceful. But it has to be, Dr. Velian said desperately. Peaceful species always win in the end. Violence is self-defeating. Aggression leads to destruction. Kethvar's yellow eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. Doctor, may I ask you a personal question? Dr. Velian nodded nervously. Have you ever had to fight for your life? No, of course not. Have you ever gone hungry because food was scarce? No. Have you ever lost friends to disease or natural disaster? No. Medical care and environmental controls prevent such things. Then how? Kethvar asked quietly. Can you claim to understand what drives violent species when you have never experienced the conditions that create them? The chamber fell silent again. In that silence, every council member was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had spent centuries believing that peace was inevitable, that violence was a relic of primitive thinking, that civilization naturally led to harmony. But now they faced two species that had achieved civilization despite violence, not because of its absence. Two species that had turned their struggles into strength and their conflicts into capability. Two species that made their peaceful galaxy feel very small and very vulnerable. The assessment was supposed to last all day. Instead, Counselor Thak called for an emergency recess after only 2 hours. The Deathworlders had given them a lot to think about. The emergency alert came at 347 station time, when most of the council members were sleeping. Admiral Korvex, the Krillian military coordinator, was pulled from his rest cycle by urgent communications from the outer system. Status report, he growled into his communicator. The Krillians were one of the few warrior species in the council, though even they preferred negotiation to actual fighting. Pirates, Admiral, came the reply from the monitoring station. The Crimson Nebula fleet, they've hit the Trader's Rest station in the Kepler Belt. Admiral Korvex's blood went cold. The Crimson Nebula was the most feared pirate organization in known space. They struck fast, took everything valuable, and disappeared before help could arrive. Worse, they took prisoners to sell as slaves in the outer systems. How many ships? He asked. 15 vessels, including their flagship. They've surrounded the station and disabled its defenses. Early reports suggest they're holding over 3,000 civilians hostage. Korvex closed his eyes in despair. This was a nightmare scenario. The Council's standard response would take days to organize. By then, the pirates would be long gone with their captives. Assemble the emergency committee, he ordered. Prepare the usual negotiation protocols, and contact the pirates' representatives. Find out what they want. Sir, the voice hesitated. The human and Saurian delegations are requesting immediate audience with you. Korvex paused. In all the chaos, he had forgotten about the Deathworlders. Send them to my office. Minutes later, Admiral Korvex faced the four most dangerous beings he had ever met. Saracen stood calmly beside the massive form of Ambassador Kethvar. Behind them, Marcus Wright and Rixtal waited like coiled springs ready to launch. Admiral, Sarah said without preamble, we understand you have a piracy situation. A regrettable incident, Korvex replied carefully. But the Council has established procedures for dealing with such matters. We will negotiate for the hostages' release. How long will that take? Kethvar asked. The committee will need time to assess the situation, establish communication protocols, and determine what the pirates want. Perhaps a week, maybe 2. The hostages will be dead or sold by then, Marcus said quietly. We have dealt with the Crimson Nebula before, Korvex protested. They are businessmen, not killers. They will negotiate. They are predators, Rixtal corrected. They will take what they can and leave when it becomes unprofitable to stay. Sarah stepped forward. Admiral, we would like to volunteer our services. To resolve this situation, Korvex blinked in surprise. Volunteer? What exactly are you proposing? Let us handle the pirates, Sarah said simply. Absolutely not, Korvex replied immediately. You are diplomatic guests, not military assets. Besides, this is a delicate situation requiring careful negotiation, not violence. Kethvar's yellow eyes narrowed. Admiral, how many hostages have you successfully recovered from the Crimson Nebula in past incidents? Korvex hesitated. That information is classified. How many? Kethvar pressed. We have successfully negotiated the release of approximately 60% of captured civilians. And the other 40%? Korvex looked away. Lost to the slave trade or other circumstances. The room fell silent. Finally, Sarah spoke again. Admiral, give us 6 hours. If we fail, you can proceed with your committee meetings. 6 hours? Korvex laughed bitterly. The Crimson Nebula has 15 warships. Even if I could authorize military action, it would take days to assemble a force capable of challenging them. We don't need a force, Marcus said. We need transportation. Before Korvex could object, alarms began sounding throughout the station. His communicator crackled to life. Admiral, the pirates are demanding immediate response to their terms. They want 50 million credits in rare minerals, plus guaranteed safe passage. They're giving us 12 hours to comply or they start executing. Hostages. Korvex looked at the Deathworlders with new desperation. What exactly would you need? A fast ship, Sarah replied. Basic supplies and complete freedom of action. No oversight, no coordination with Council forces. We work better alone, Kethvar said. Korvex thought of the 3,000 innocent beings trapped on Trader's Rest Station. He thought of the 40% who had never come home from previous pirate attacks. He thought of the council committees that would spend precious days debating while people died. Done, he said. 2 hours later, the Deathworlders departed Council Station in a borrowed scout ship. Admiral Korvex watched them go with a mixture of hope and terror. He had just authorized 2 unknown species to engage one of the most dangerous pirate fleets in the galaxy. The Krillian warrior in him admired their confidence. The council administrator in him wondered if he had just made the worst mistake of his career. 6 hours and 17 minutes after departure, the scout ship returned to Council Station. Admiral Korvex met them in the docking bay, surrounded by medical teams and debriefing specialists. He expected to see battle damage on the ship, wounded Deathworlders, perhaps a few rescued hostages. Instead, Sarah Chen walked down the ramp looking like she had been on a pleasant sightseeing tour. "Status report," Korvex demanded. "Mission accomplished," Sarah replied. "All hostages recovered. 0 civilian casualties." Korvex stared at her. "All of them? 3,000 people?" 3,047, Kethvar corrected as she emerged from the ship, including the station's commander and his staff. "And the pirates?" Marcus and Rixtal exchanged a look that might have been satisfaction. "No longer a concern," Marcus said simply. "You negotiated their surrender?" Korvex asked hopefully. "Not exactly," Rixtal replied. Admiral Korvex's communicator buzzed. He activated it to hear his monitoring station officer's excited voice. "Admiral, you need to see this, the sensor recordings from the Kepler Belt incident. Patch it through to the main viewer," Korvex ordered. The docking bay's large screen activated, showing sensor data from the battle site. Korvex watched in growing amazement as the recordings played out. The scout ship had approached the pirate fleet at high speed, making no attempt at stealth. The Crimson Nebula vessels had moved to intercept, probably assuming it was an easy target. The battle lasted exactly 11 minutes. The scout ship moved through the pirate formation like a blade through silk. It struck with surgical precision, targeting engines and weapon systems while avoiding areas where hostages might be harmed. One by one, the pirate vessels were disabled or destroyed. But it was not just the speed of the victory that shocked Korvex. It was the efficiency. Every shot was perfectly placed. Every maneuver was exactly calculated. The Deathworlders fought like they had been planning this battle for years instead of hours. "How?" Korvex whispered. "Practice," Sarah said simply. "Both our species have been dealing with pirates for centuries. We know how they think, how they fight, how they try to escape." "The Crimson Nebula flagship," Korvex pointed at the screen. "It's completely intact. How did you capture it without damaging the hostage areas?" Kethvar's expression might have been a smile. "We boarded it." "Boarded it? In space combat?" "The quickest way to end a siege is to remove the people conducting it," Rixtal explained. "We entered through their docking bay while they were distracted by the ship combat." Korvex looked at the tactical display again. While the scout ship had been engaging the fleet, 2 small figures had somehow crossed open space and entered the flagship. The sensor data showed them moving through the ship's corridors like ghosts, systematically eliminating resistance. "You fought through an entire pirate vessel? Just the 2 of you?" "Pirates are bullies," Marcus said calmly. "They rely on intimidation and surprise. When faced with real opposition, they break quickly." "The hostages?" Korvex asked. "How did you get them all out safely?" "We didn't," Sarah replied. "We brought the station to them." The sensor data showed the final phase of the operation. The Deathworlders had somehow restored power to the disabled trader's rest station and moved it to a safe distance from the battle. The pirates had found themselves fighting for empty space while their intended victims escaped. "This is..." Korvex struggled for words. "This is the most efficient military operation I've ever witnessed." "It was adequate," Kethvar said with typical Saurian understatement. "The Crimson Nebula has terrorized this sector for decades," Korvex continued. "My people have lost countless ships trying to stop them. How did you make it look so easy?" Sarah and Kethvar exchanged another of their silent communications. "Admiral," Sarah said finally, "with respect, your people have been playing by rules that pirates don't follow. You fight with honor. You try to minimize casualties. You attempt to capture rather than kill." "And that's wrong?" Korvex asked. "Not wrong," Kethvar replied, "but ineffective against those who show no honor themselves." "We fight to win," Marcus added simply. "Everything else is secondary." Admiral Korvex looked at the sensor data one more time. 15 pirate ships destroyed or captured, 3,000 hostages rescued, 0 friendly casualties. Mission time, 6 hours and 17 minutes. In 6 hours, 2 species he had never heard of before this week had accomplished what the Council's military forces had been trying to do for decades. I need to report this to the Council. The emergency council session was called for dawn. Every member attended, though some participated by hologram from their distant homeworlds. The chamber that had seemed so peaceful just days before now felt like a courtroom where the galaxy's future would be decided. Councillor Thack called the session to order with obvious reluctance. His shell was completely retracted, making his voice sound hollow and distant. We are here to vote on the membership applications of Earth and Saros 4. The usual formalities were skipped. Everyone had seen Admiral Korvex's report. Everyone had watched the sensor recordings from the Crimson Nebula incident. The peaceful species that made up the Galactic Council had spent the night confronting a truth they never wanted to face. They were not alone in the galaxy, and they were not safe. Dr. Velian spoke first, her fur displaying the nervous purple that had become her constant color since meeting the Deathworlders. The psychological profiles are concerning. Both species show what we would classify as pathological acceptance of violence. They show survival instincts, Admiral Korvex corrected, which we apparently lack. They destroyed 15 ships in 6 hours, Dr. Velian continued. 15 ships with crews totaling over 800 beings. That's mass murder. That's war, Korvex replied grimly. Something we've forgotten how to fight. Councillor Thack tried to maintain order. Please, let us focus on the membership criteria. Both species have demonstrated advanced technology and stable governments. They have shown willingness to cooperate with other species. The question is whether their methods are compatible with our peaceful alliance. Their methods saved 3,000 lives, Admiral Korvex pointed out. Our methods would have resulted in negotiations while hostages were sold into slavery. A new voice joined the debate. Councillor Zephyr of the Etherian Collective spoke from her distant homeworld via hologram. Her people were pure energy beings who had transcended physical form eons ago. I have consulted the deep archives, she said in her whistle-song voice. There are records of other species like these. The galaxy was not always peaceful. The chamber fell silent. The Etherians were the oldest known species, existing since before the current galactic civilization began. If they had memories of violent times, those memories were older than most species' recorded history. What do the archives say? Thack asked. They speak of the Age of Fire, Zephyr replied, a time when predator species ruled through strength. Civilizations rose and fell in constant warfare. Billions died in conflicts that raged across entire sectors. What ended it? Dr. Velian asked. They destroyed themselves, Zephyr said simply. The violent species fought until only the peaceful ones remained. We thought we had learned the galaxy's final lesson. Violence leads to extinction. Peace leads to survival. But these species survived, Korvex observed. They learned to control their violence instead of being destroyed by it. Exactly, Zephyr agreed, and that terrifies me more than any weapon they possess. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued for rejection, fearing that accepting violent species would corrupt their peaceful civilization. Others pointed out that the galaxy was vast and unknown, and that they might need protectors against future threats. Finally, Councillor Thack called for the Deathworlder delegations to make their final statements. Sarah Chen and Ambassador Kethvar entered the chamber together. Behind them, Marcus Wright and Rixtal took their positions with the silent grace of professional soldiers. The 4 of them faced the council with calm confidence. Honored council members, Sarah began, we understand your concerns. Our species are different from yours. We come from worlds that taught us hard lessons about survival and strength. But we did not come here to bring violence to your peaceful galaxy, Kethvar added. We came because we have learned something your species have not yet discovered. And what is that? Thack asked. Peace is not the absence of violence, Sarah replied. Peace is violence controlled and directed toward protecting what matters most. You have built something beautiful here, HFY continued. Dozens of species working together, sharing knowledge, creating prosperity for trillions of beings. But beauty is fragile. It requires protection. We offer ourselves as that protection, Sarah said. We will stand guard at the edges of your territory. We will face the threats you cannot face. We will do the things your peaceful nature will not allow you to do. In exchange, HFY added, we ask only for a place in your civilization. Our children will grow up learning your arts and sciences. They will contribute to your culture and your progress. They will become more than just warriors. But they will remember how to be warriors when the need arises, Marcus said quietly. Because the galaxy is vast and it is not all peaceful. Dr. Velian leaned forward. How can we trust species that speak so casually of violence? How do we know you won't turn that violence against us? Sarah and HFY looked at each other, then back at the council. Because, Sarah said simply, we could have done so already. The truth of those words hit the council like a physical blow. In the past week, the Deathworlders had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything the peaceful species possessed. They could have taken whatever they wanted by force. Instead, they had asked politely to join. We choose cooperation over conquest, HFY explained. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to make that choice. Councillor Thack called for a recess while the council voted privately. The Deathworlders waited outside the chamber, watching the peaceful aliens hurry past on their daily business. None of them knew that their galaxy was about to change forever. When the council reconvened, Thack's voice shook as he announced the results. The vote is unanimous, he said. The Galactic Council welcomes Earth and Soros IV as full members. It was not a vote of enthusiasm, it was a vote of fear. But it was still unanimous, Sarah smiled politely. Thank you for your trust. We will not disappoint you. We hope not, Thack replied. What are your first priorities as council members? Border Patrol, HFY said immediately. We would like to survey the unexplored regions beyond your current territory. Someone should know what's out there. And defense planning, Marcus added. Your security systems are adequate for peaceful times, but they need upgrading for less peaceful possibilities. Of course, Thack agreed weakly. Whatever you think is necessary. As the session ended, Sarah Chen stood to address the council one final time. Honorable council members, she said. You have shown great wisdom today. You have chosen to adapt rather than remain static. You have chosen to prepare for an uncertain future rather than assume a peaceful past will continue forever. She paused, looking around the chamber at the dozens of alien species who had just voted to change their galaxy forever. But I want you to remember something important. We are the friendly Deathworlders. We come in peace, we seek cooperation, and we offer protection. Her smile was warm and genuine, but there was something in her eyes that made every council member shiver. You really don't want to meet the other kind. The chamber fell silent as the implications of those words sank in. Somewhere out in the vast unexplored galaxy, there might be other Deathworlder species. Species that had not learned to control their violence. Species that would not ask politely to join the galactic community. Species that would take what they wanted by force. As the council members filed out of the chamber, each of them carried the same thought. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. Not because any new threat had appeared, but because they had finally learned what true danger looked like. And they had learned it from the beings who had just promised to protect them from it. Over the following weeks, reports began filtering back to Council Station from across the galaxy. Human and Saurian ships were patrolling the border regions. Defense installations were being upgraded with new technology. Early warning systems were being established in previously unmonitored sectors. The peaceful species watched these preparations with mixed feelings. Part of them was grateful for the protection. Part of them mourned the end of their innocent age. But all of them slept a little better knowing that when the darkness came from beyond the borders of their safe galaxy, they would not face it alone. They would have monsters of their own to fight. Friendly monsters who had chosen to protect rather than conquer. but monsters nonetheless. And in the deep archives of the Etherian Collective, Counselor Zephyr added a new entry to the historical records. The Age of Fire has not returned. But the Guardians of the Age of Peace have finally arrived. May they prove worthy of our trust. May we prove worthy of their protection, and may we never discover what lies beyond the borders they now watch for us. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps in ways they did not yet understand it would be better.